Let's continue to get analysis on our breaking news story. The Gauteng High Court in Pretoria has dismissed with cost the DA's application that the long-standing ANC policy of a cadre deployment be declared unconstitutional and unlawful. For more on this, we now speak to Professor in Political Sciences at UNISA, Professor Dirk Kotze. Prof, thank you so much for your time this morning. So what do you make of this court's ruling?
Well, I think it follows soon after the Constitutional Court judgment about the handing over of the documents of the committee of the ANC dealing with cadre deployment. But I think this is more about the principle per se. So it is not about accountability and about making it public, but rather about this. And I think what is in this case important is to say that this type of practice is not necessarily, because it's applied in different forms all over the world, it is almost impossible to say that political parties cannot become involved in the appointment of especially senior persons, like a DG, for example, of a department, also some other senior persons, if that is taking place. I think what we have seen, and where the Zondo Commission has been very critical on cadre deployment, is the range of it, that it went down to very low levels of appointments, that it included also discussions, for example, of the judges, of members of the judiciary, and other similar components. So it was seen as an intervention, as an unacceptable intervention by the party. But the point is that parties cannot completely isolate themselves from certain appointments, as I said, especially senior appointments. And to declare that illegal and unconstitutional would have made political life actually untenable. And it could have opened up the possibility that persons who would then be regarded as that they've transgressed the law can even be taken to court. And I think that's what they want to avoid.
That's exactly it, Prof, in terms of your last sentiments. I mean, a lot of some political parties have also come in, to talk about cadre deployment, asking a question of, is it in fact wrong? I mean, is this only isolated to the ANC?
Yes, I think there are some factors that complicate the matter for the ANC. The fact is that they formalized it in the form of a committee, that they take formal decisions about it, that it wasn't part of, let's say, a caucus or a discussion in general terms. The second one, which is not the ANC's fault, is that this type of practice in other parts of the world is accepted because there is a general change of government. So there's a rotation principle involved. So it means that a director general of a certain department will be changed when a new party becomes the government. So that element of rotation and not entrenchment is therefore by implication included in it. We know now the ANC is for 30 years already in power. So that principle does not apply, and it's in those terms where the complications develop over time.
And in fact, when you were listening, to John Steenhuisen, he did make a lot of aligned thinking around, cadre deployment and what we are currently faced with as South Africans in this country in terms of corruption, etc. And encouraging, in fact, South Africans that, the only way you can change cadre deployment is to go out in your numbers to vote. Of course, we know that date is now the 29th of May. I mean, how does this ruling then, or this judgment, fit politically, considering that we have an election coming up?
Well, I think we will see that in most of the opposition parties, they are critical of cadre deployment. They want it to be stopped, and that they promise themselves not to do it I would say, qualified in the way in which the ANC did. But, with any party that is in a governing position, whether it's the DA in the Western Cape or at local government level, any of these parties are exposed to this. They are going to, and therefore to have a watertight distinction between what is their responsibility and what is the responsibility of the administration is very difficult to maintain. So, yes, they will be critical of the ANC's practice. And these judgments, especially the first one, where they have to disclose the documentation, is in a sense now qualified by this judgment to say, but it is not completely illegal. It's part of the political reality of all governing parties. So it's for opposition parties, it's a slight setback, I would say, because they can't now go into the election of saying, well, the ANC acted completely illegal.
And so, Prof, when we look at, what the DA's other options are, of course, we know that the DA has now said that it will appeal this court judgment. And if you look at, what's happening parallel to that is that they now have all the Cadre deployment records that were delivered to them by the ANC following this 3-year court battle. And of course, that ruling by the Constitutional Court. I mean, what are some of the things that they are hoping to then find that would possibly bear some form of substance in terms of their argument?
Well, I think first of all, they want to see if it implicates President Ramaphosa, because he was the chairperson of this political committee of the ANC since his appointment as deputy president. So it was since the time that they are asking for 2013 onwards until he became the president in 2018. So that I think is the first objective. Secondly, they want to see which positions were implicated or are implicated in this process. Who are the persons who were ultimately appointed and were done because of the intervention of the ANC? But I think the first priority is to see who are the politicians in the ANC who were involved in this, what was the role that they played, and whether they can use that in this coming election in order to discredit it.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time this morning. And of course, for that analysis, that was Professor Dirk Kotze there on that outcome of the DA's application that the long-standing ANC policy of cadre deployment declared unconstitutional and unlawful.